wonderful night for Oscar, 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 who will win? Welcome everyone to Caleb Watches Movies, the channel where I, Caleb, randomly select from one of the many movies that I own and I watch and review them for you, unlike days like today where I take the ranking of a certain film franchise or an awards ceremony and I rank the crap out of them. And this is continuing an annual tradition here on my channel where I pick the next decade when it comes to the Best Picture winners of the Academy Awards and I rank them amongst the decade. I've already ranked the Best Picture winners of the 2010s and the 2000s, which means this year we are looking at all of the Best Picture winners of the 1990s, or the movies that the Gen Zers out there would call old. I'm a child of the 90s, so this was a nice little treat for me going back and watching all of these Best Picture films. Now please know I'm going off of the year that the Oscars were held, that these films won Best Picture. So you're not going to see the film American Beauty on here because that Oscar ceremony was held in 2000, therefore I've already ranked it amongst my 2000 Best Picture winners. And this is all about the winners of Best Picture. We are not talking here about what should have been nominated. We are not ranking all the other nominees that happened in the 90s. We are only looking at the 10 films that actually won Best Picture in the 1990s. It's a very romantic decade. The Academy loved going after a story about romance, the romantic thriller, instead of going with like a nice revolutionary war picture, something like a Saving Private Ryan. All right, those are my last 2 cents that I'm going to leave at the door. Again, we are talking about the Best Pictures. I say we get into it. The Oscars this year are this weekend, so this is a nice little appetizer for you. Let's talk about the Best Picture winners of the 1990s, starting at my ranking of number 10. At the bottom of this list in the 1990s comes one of the worst Best Picture winners, in my opinion, and one of the most boring movies that I've ever watched. I've only watched it 2 times. The second time was for this ranking, and I plan on never watching it again, and that is The English Patient. Ralph Fiennes is out in the desert trying to map Africa, and yet this beautiful married woman comes along, and he's so annoyed with her that he falls madly in love with her, and wants to kiss her little navel area here that he's so obsessed with in the movie. This movie is so goddamn boring. It's told in nonlinear structure, so we go back to when Ralph Fiennes was handsome, and then we go into the future when Ralph Fiennes is a burned up, scarred tissue man who people think is the enemy, but they're kind of not sure, so they're like, well, let's just transport him via hospital carriage constantly. Let's drop him off at this castle because he's dying, and this nurse is very fucking depressed, so let's just have her stay. And oh, hey, there's Willem Dafoe with no thumbs, and he's coming in, and he's happy, and then sad, and not happy again. This movie's just fucking boring. I don't know what the point of this movie was. That's why it's at the bottom of this list. At number 9 is a film that came out in the early 90s that proved that racism is no longer a thing, and we're all fine. We're all fine now as a society. Black people, white people, we all get along. This is Driving Miss Daisy. An old Southern belle can't drive herself around anymore to get to her gin games with her girlfriends or go to the store to get groceries. So her son's gonna hire a black man to drive her around because she can't drive anymore. And boy, she keeps checking the stock in her pantry because if anything's missing, oh gosh, it has to be the black driver who's just sitting there. I do like this movie slightly more than The English Patient. It does have Morgan Freeman in here, who is a wonderful actor, so to see him kind of spar up against little Miss Daisy, who's being a racist little bitch, it's nice to see him go toe-to-toe with her and kind of put his foot down and kind of make his presence known amongst everything. But it's not a film that's revolutionary in any way. It's not impacting me. It's not impacting my soul at all. And therefore, I'm questioning why this film won Best Picture that year. But it did, so it has to be on this list, and I've talked about it, and I'm gonna move on. At number 8 is one of the most surprising Best Picture winners, I think, because many people would say that Goodfellas should have won this year, but instead it went to Kevin Costner's Dancing with Wolves. And for all intents and purposes, yeah, sure, Goodfellas should have won that year. But it didn't, so we're here talking about Dances with Wolves. And I like this man's search of freedom. I like that he finds freedom on the Great Plains, even though it's pretty hilly in his area where he's at. Not really a plain, but, you know, It's how the Great Plains are. I used to live in the Great Plains, so, you know, it's not all flat. You got some hills in there. You got a couple of tall hills, so they're there. You do have to listen to awful voiceover narration from Kevin Costner, who reminds me of Will Ferrell's sketch on SNL when he was on SNL with the high voice modulation. These people have taken me in. They provide me skins, and I provide them laughter and entertainment. And yet this man directed it and thought that was okay. I mean, I guess it was okay. It won Best Picture, so good for you, Dances with Wolves. You danced your way to the throne room. You won the award. Awesome. I don't know if you can tell, but a lot of these ones at the bottom of this list would probably be towards the bottom of my list if I ranked all Best Picture winners, because they're just not that long lasting. It's a story that I'm watching like, okay, it was fine, and then I'm going to forget about it in 10 minutes when I go do anything else. So far, that's what all three of these movies are to me. At number 7 is a revenge tale or a story about reclaiming the good old days of murder and plundering. This is from Clint Eastwood's Unforgiven. Some really great performances in here that I really love. Gene Hackman, I think, is a splendid villain, and he toes that line. He's not really a villain. He's just a sheriff. He is a hard-ass sheriff, but he's still trying to hold down the law. He just gets a little arrogant about it. So I really appreciate that character study with him. He's honest, he will have a laugh with anyone, but if you have so much as any small black mark on you, if you break the law in any way, you are going to get your ass beaten to an inch of your bloody life. And then in comes Clint Eastwood, who's had a history of murder and just trying to be a good person. He found a wife who made him a good person, but now that angel of his life is gone, and now he just has these kids that he's trying to feed. So yeah, he's gonna take a job of killing someone if he gets paid for it. That way he can feed his children. Unforgiven is a really nice Western. I'm not the biggest Western fan, but this is one of the better ones that I've enjoyed. At number 6, and when I revealed my list to my wife said, "You're putting it that low? You're going to get a lot of people angry at you." But I can't help it, because if you watch this movie, this really long movie, and you listen to the dialogue, you'd realize that James Cameron is not really great at writing dialogue. He is great at the spectacle of everything. So if we're talking James Cameron in the 90s, Best Picture winner, of course we're talking about the ever so popular Titanic. Visually stunning, visually innovative, it still holds up today. It's just the characters and the dialogue that is cheesy as hell. I don't think people used to talk like this, and people definitely don't talk like this now. This movie, though, does hold a very special place in my heart, because this movie was the movie that really started the chemical reaction inside of me, if you know what I mean. I had never really seen a naked woman before, and then Kate Winslet is here, disrobing with the heart of the ocean around her neck and nothing else, and Jack is drawing her, and me being a little 4th grader sitting in the theater watching it, I'm just watching it go along, and if you were watching me, you could see the spark generate inside me. So if anything, I want to put it higher on this list just for that, but I can't. Not with that dialogue that I was hearing in this movie. At number 5 is a film that has one of the greatest villain performances of all time. Hell, just performances of all time. Anthony Hopkins as Hannibal Lecter. Here he is in Silence of the Lambs. I love a good cop drama. I love a good suspenseful thriller. This film, it just had me on the edge of my seat the entire time. Still holds up today. I have watched this countless times. Jodie Foster is wonderful in here. Her back and forth with Anthony Hopkins, between those two, it makes the movie. I believe he's on screen for 20 minutes. I think someone clocked it around the 20-minute mark, and this is a good 2-hour film. That's how impactful this performance was. And it's a great cop detective story, and I'm a sucker for those. So Silence of the Lambs, definitely in the top 5 when it comes to this decade. But I'm also a sucker for a great love story, and many people this year said that Saving Private Ryan should have won Best Picture this year. Steven Spielberg thought he was going to win. You could see him put his notes back in his pocket when they announced all of the winners. But for me, personally, I think Shakespeare in Love is the better picture and the better story, and I think deserves to be higher on this list. And here it is at number 4. Historically accurate? No. Not really. I mean, probably not. Do we really know? Do we really know that Shakespeare actually really existed? It doesn't matter to me, because when you have poetry, when you have art, something as great as Romeo and Juliet, or something as great as the writing of Shakespeare, it's just delightful. And I love seeing weird and strange takes on the crafting of such beautiful poetry. I love the portrayal of Shakespeare in this film. I love the portrayal of Elizabethan theater and Elizabethan Europe at this time. It really gets me invested in theater again. Gwyneth Paltrow is Gwyneth Paltrow. I can forgive anything with her. It's just Shakespeare overshadows her, in my opinion, and I can go along with it. I just love this love story. I love that Romeo and Juliet, how great of a play that is. The idea that it was sparked from an actual love story between Shakespeare and his love of Master Kent. I just love stories like that. It makes me joyful in my soul, and it makes me hopeful of true love just in this world. At number 3, and this is what my wife really had a problem with when I showed her how low Titanic was on my list, because I'm putting Braveheart at number 3, and I told her, yeah, Braveheart is higher than Titanic. Braveheart's score is better than the movie Titanic. James Horner's score of Braveheart is one of the best scores ever, in my opinion. You play bagpipes for me, and I am a freaking sucker for it. And the theme here, I think, is wonderful. I want it played at my funeral, damn it. But it's a great revenge love story. Is it historically accurate? God, no. There have been history essays and specials on the History Channel talking about how this movie embellishes everything. People were not here at this time. These didn't happen. People didn't wear clothing like this back then. All of this is wrong. All of this is fake. But you know what? When it comes to history, we don't fucking care, because we just love hearing a good story. That is how history begins. That is how history books start. You take what actually happened, you embellish it a little bit to make it a little bit spicier of a story, and then you tell it. And that gets people more interested. And it got this guy more interested. The battle scenes here are amazing. Mel Gibson, yes, he's a shit human being, but god damn it, he is one hell of a Hollywood director. And a hell of an actor too, which, I mean, back then he won, 3 Academy Award trophies for this film. Nowadays, you don't talk positively about the man. We just don't do that here in cancel culture. But I can at least go back and appreciate the time and just the art of a person. I can appreciate that. And I think Braveheart is an amazing film and one of the best picture winners out there. At number 2 is the Best Picture winner of what could easily be called one of the best years in film of all time in 1994, and that is Forrest Gump. Tom Hanks takes you on an incredible journey of this simpleton who looks at life in a very plain and simple way and manages to affect history and to be a part of history all throughout his journey. And that's the great idea behind Forrest Gump. He is us. We are part of history. We are part of history now with what we are doing. This film is funny. It is sad. It is heartbreaking. It is inspiring. It is uplifting. So many memorable lines that we still quote today. This film still holds up and is one of the greatest films of all time. I will give a little 2 cents that one of my favorite movies, definitely over this one, is Shawshank Redemption, which was also nominated this year. So I say that film should have won Best Picture in my opinion. But again, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the winners, the actual winners themselves. And Forrest Gump is tremendous. It is one of my favorite movies. I used to have it in my top 10 favorite movies of all time. I think I took it out just with how life has changed for me, but it's a movie that I used to watch on repeat. I would watch it 3 times a day. That is how great of a story I think this is, and just seeing how someone lives through history without knowing that he's living through history. It's a great metaphor and mirror to society of how we live our lives today. Forrest Gump is one of the best films of all time. If you have not watched it yet, you need to. It's definitely worthy of a Best Picture win. But then sometimes there are films that come along that transcends the idea of being a movie, and the movie itself is actually history and is part of history. And I did a watch along of this film last December because it was the 20-year anniversary of when this film was released. Schindler's List is one of the most important films ever made, and I know Spielberg feels about it that it is his greatest triumph. It is his greatest movie that he has ever created. And you can see all of the love and respect that he put into this film. And really everyone involved in this picture, the respect of these real life people's story and how this awful event happened in this world. It's one of the most recent terrible events that have happened in this world. There have been other terrible things that have happened in the history of humans on this planet, of course. But to know that this happened, and then there's a section of people in this country, on this planet, that just don't believe that this existed, which is absolutely disgusting, which makes this film all the more important for it to be made and to be shown, because this did happen. This was an awful, dark, terrible time of our history, but it is our history, and we need to accept that it happened and then move on and be better than what happened in here. The performances, the way this film is shot in black and white, the use of shadows, which is what Spielberg is known for, all of his silhouettes, you get a ton of that in here. So what you see on screen becomes hauntingly beautiful. The use of tension, the use of the theme from John Williams, but then the lack of sound, the lack of music, and just experiencing what these actors are going through. Yeah, there's really no words when you talk about this movie. This is an experience, and this is one of those rare movies where it's not a movie, it's an experience, and it's an experience that you need to experience in your life. I think this is a must-watch for everyone because it is that impactful. So Schindler's List definitely belongs at #1 amongst the Best Picture winners of the 90s, and is definitely towards the top of the list of the greatest Best Picture winners of all time. And that is my ranking of all of the Best Picture winners from the Oscars in the 1990s. What did you think of my ranking? What is your ranking of all the Best Picture winners of the 1990s? Whatever you thought, comment below and let me know what you thought about it. And as always, if you like what you see here, if you like my take on movies, then hit the subscribe button to make sure you hit that bell. See you the next time I'm releasing next movie review. So guys, I will see you next time on the channel. Have fun watching the Oscars this weekend. And in the meantime, be well, be good to each other, and go watch a movie. Take care, guys.